You would never believe what Michael Landon's son just revealed about him. Michael Landon was one of the most loved actors in Hollywood. You probably remember him for his roles in Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, and Highway to Heaven. He was the ultimate family man on screen, but what you don't know is that behind the scenes, when the cameras and lights went off, he was a completely different person. His personal life was full of drama, secrets, and heartbreak that the public didn't get a glimpse into. However, his son, Michael Jr., has finally opened up about what it was like having the great Michael Landon as a father. And it's not what we expected. What did he say? Get ready for surprising revelations, raw emotions, and untold secrets. A troubling childhood. For millions of fans around the world, Michael Landon was the ultimate father figure. He played the roles of warm, loving, and wise fathers on television. And at some point, everyone began believing that was exactly who he was in real life. It was really hard to separate his father figure role from his real personality. But behind the scenes, things were far more complicated than you could have ever imagined. You see, Landon had a total of 9 children from 3 different marriages, and his personal life was nowhere near smooth. Landon's personal life was complex, marked by publicized relationships and family challenges. Now, decades later, one of his sons, the very one named after him, has revealed some deeply personal and shocking confessions that change every single thing we thought we knew about the Hollywood icon. Michael Graham Landon Jr. literally grew up in the shadow of his father. As the son of a living icon, Michael Jr. seemed almost destined for a picture-perfect life. From the outside, it seemed like he had the perfect life. But do you know that what people saw on the surface was nothing like the painful reality he lived behind closed doors? Behind the scenes, his childhood was far from perfect, and he struggled with many battles, some personal, and some as a result of his father's choices. Unfortunately, these struggles pushed him into an entirely different world that few people know about, at least not until his confession. Michael Jr. was born on June 20th, 1964, to Michael Landon and his second wife, Lynn No. He was the second of 4 children from their marriage, and he definitely grew up surrounded by the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. Being the son of one of television's biggest stars came with perks, which included private schools, luxurious homes, and a lifestyle most kids could only dream of. For most kids, a normal childhood involves playgrounds, school, and the occasional weekend cartoons. But for Michael Jr., growing up also meant being exposed to the glamorous world of Hollywood and spending his childhood on the set of one of television's most beloved family dramas, Little House on the Prairie, where he had a small role and made brief appearances on a few episodes. His father played multiple roles on the show, including acting, directing, and producing. Now that meant young Michael had the ultimate VIP access to everything happening behind the scenes. While his dad was busy directing and when he wasn't acting himself, Michael and his sister would run around the set, exploring the rustic landscape and even getting into mischief with the show's young cast. The cast and crew members of the show became like older siblings to him, and the friendships formed on that set lasted years after it ended. If you think Hollywood icon Landon was all business, think again, because he actually had a fun side to him. Michael Jr. remembers his father as being the king of on-set pranks. Despite being a perfectionist when it came to directing and acting, he also loved to lighten the mood with some good old-fashioned mischief. Michael revealed that one of his dad's favorite tricks was placing tiny frogs or lizards in his mouth and then casually spitting them out to freak people out on set. Imagine walking up to Michael Landon expecting a serious conversation, and then out comes a little frog from his mouth. The experience was really great for Michael because he got to experience firsthand that his dad wasn't just the TV legend America loved. He was also a hilarious, fun-loving father who made sure the set never felt too serious. More than anything, spending time on the set of Little House on the Prairie gave young Michael a rare, behind-the-scenes education on how television magic was made. This was like film school before he even knew he wanted to be a director. However, while this experience was great, on the flip side, being the son of a Hollywood icon also came with immense pressure, overwhelming expectations, and a family life that was far from the wholesome image his father portrayed on television. What most people didn't know was that Michael Landon was a perfectionist, not just in his career but also at home. He had super high standards for his children, the same way he did for his career, and failure was never an option. For young Michael, this meant constantly feeling like he had to live up to his father's larger-than-life reputation. But things took an unexpected turn for the worse when his parents' marriage began to fall apart. In 1980, when Michael Graham was just 15 years old, he discovered something that no child ever wants to know. His father, whom he loved so much, who played the ultimate loving husband and devoted father on television, was doing the exact opposite of what he'd been portraying. He was cheating on his mother, and not just with anyone, but with a woman half his age. The other woman was Cindy Clerico, a beautiful young makeup artist from the set of Little House on the Prairie, which he had worked on. The revelation was absolutely devastating, not just for the fans of the actor, but for Michael Jr., who had spent his entire life idolizing his father. It was almost as if the man who played kind and wise father figures on television had become the villain in his own family's story. And the worst part? The entire world was watching. When the shocking scandal happened, it resulted in a very messy divorce. And it wasn't just a personal heartbreak, it was a public humiliation for his wife, Lynn, Michael, and their entire family. To make matters worse, the press was obsessed with the drama. News about the divorce was everywhere. The newspapers, magazines, television gossip shows, you name it, and everyone had something to say about it. For Michael Jr., let's just say it was a complete nightmare. At the time when it happened, he was just a teenager, already dealing with the usual struggles of growing up in puberty. And now he had to face the most painful moment of his life right under the public spotlight. People whispered. Friends at school probably stared and gossiped. His father's name, Michael Landon, was no longer just associated with a beloved TV star. It had been soiled and linked to a terrible scandal, betrayal, and a broken home. His mother, Lynn, was completely heartbroken and humiliated. She had dedicated nearly 2 decades of her life to being the perfect Hollywood wife, supporting Landon through thick and thin and his rise to fame. And now she was left alone while he started a new, glamorous life with a younger woman. Unfortunately, Michael was caught in the middle. He saw his mother go through one of the most difficult times of her life. He also got to watch his siblings go through the pain and confusion as they tried to understand why their father had chosen someone else over them. And deep down, he felt rage. He was angry at everyone and everything, and ultimately the pain of the divorce changed him. He felt lost, confused, and deeply hurt. He started acting out, pushing away friends, family, and the people who still cared about him. He no longer wanted to be just Michael Landon's son because that name had been completely soiled. He wasn't just grieving the loss of his family as he knew it, he was grieving the loss of the father and the life he thought he had. Studies indicate that children of divorce can experience emotional distress, which sometimes leads to behavioral struggles. And that's exactly what happened to Michael Jr. Instead of dealing with the pain head-on, he turned to rebellion. He became defiant, refusing to listen to anyone. Not his mother, not his teachers, not even his closest friends. The anger inside him became so uncontrollable, and the emotions built up to the extent that he turned to reckless behavior. He began drinking, partying, and indulging in all sorts of impulsive decisions. He didn't stop there. He made sure to surround himself with people who encouraged his rebellion. He was absolutely ready to do anything to distract himself from the deep sadness and abandonment he felt. In an interview, Michael Jr. opened up about the sad reality of the situation, saying, "My family and my father were everything to me. I had put him on a pedestal. So when my parents separated and divorced when I was 15 years old, the world I knew and believed in completely fell apart." 4 years later, in 1983, as a student in the film school at the University of Southern California, I became reckless and rebellious. I drove too fast and had several car accidents. I drank and used illicit substances, and I got kicked out of the University of Southern California. Perhaps the hardest part of the entire situation was for Michael Jr. to watch his father move on and start a new life as if nothing had happened. Landon eventually married Cindy Clerico and began a new life just a few years after abandoning his first family. The California backyard beach wedding, set in Malibu, happened on Valentine's Day in 1983. And at the time of the wedding, Cindy was already pregnant with their first child, Jennifer. Soon, they welcomed another child, a son named Sean. And that was the final stab in the heart for Michael Jr. It wasn't just that his father had left, it was that it felt like his father had replaced them. Michael saw his father give his new wife and children the love and attention that he and his siblings had once received. While he, his siblings, and his mother were still picking up the pieces from the divorce, his father was building a brand new, perfect life elsewhere. And the pain of that realization hurt him for years. And it's no surprise why he suddenly began to act out and indulge in rebellious acts. For a while, things seemed really bad for Michael. But then something happened that would change the course of his life forever. Embracing Christianity. Right in the midst of his darkest days while struggling with his reckless behavior, something remarkable happened to Michael. He found faith. Of course, he had always known about God. He grew up in a world where faith was present, but it had never really been personal to him. It wasn't until he hit rock bottom after the heartbreaking collapse of his family that he started looking for something deeper. Here's how it all started. His mother, Lynn No, was so heartbroken and lost that she began searching for something and anything that could help her heal. And that's when her manicurist, named Lois, stepped in with some unexpected advice. Lois wasn't just doing Lynn's nails, she had become somewhat of a friend and confidant, and she knew just how to speak directly into Lynn's heart. She told Lynn that the strength she needed, the peace she was looking for, wasn't going to come from getting revenge, finding a new man, or drowning in her grief. It was going to come from Jesus Christ. At first, Lynn wasn't sure what to think, but the more Lois talked, the more something inside her shifted. Lynn wanted to know more, and she was invited to church by Lois. According to Michael Jr., she eventually started going to church and reading the Bible, and she gave her life to Christ and converted to Christianity. As time went on, she tried to convince Michael to join her, but he had absolutely no interest and didn't want to hear it. Michael later confessed that although he believed in God in some vague, distant way, at that point, the church was not part of his life, and the only times he had ever gone were with his grandparents on some rare occasions. But his mom wouldn't give up, and she kept gently pushing, and eventually, just to get her off his back, he agreed. That first visit was extremely impactful for Michael, and he later revealed in an interview that he felt like the pastor spoke directly to his heart that very day, so he decided to keep going back. Week after week, he sat in that church listening, questioning, trying to make sense of everything. The anger he had been carrying for years, the bitterness, the resentment, and the rebellious behavior. Finally, one day the pastor gave an altar call, a moment where people were invited to step forward and give their lives to Christ. And Michael stood up and made the decision to convert to Christianity. After that very moment, everything changed for him. In an interview, he confessed, "After I accepted Christ, He took away the desire for drinking and using illicit substances. I didn't want them to be a part of my life and who I wanted to become." Now, there were also all sorts of issues of anger and forgiveness, and those didn't change overnight. But throughout my journey, Christ has revealed those and has helped me to deal with them, and still is, for which I'm thankful. But that's not all. Michael also had to make a very big decision about forgiving his father, and his commitment to the church played a very big role in making this happen. He learned that forgiveness wasn't about excusing what his father had done. It was rather about setting himself free from the pain. And of course, with God guiding him, he started to rebuild his life on his own terms. In an interview with Fox News, he opened up about his reasons for finally forgiving his father after years of resentment and anger, saying, "At the end of the day, if my God's forgiven me for all the things I've done in my past, why would I not be charitable and do the same thing for anybody else in my life? At the end of the day, it's a necessary mark for anybody's wholeness. You have to forgive." After finally forgiving his father 4 years later, Michael tied the knot with the love of his life, Cherie Gregory, and slowly, he suddenly discovered what he wanted to become in life and the path he wanted to carve out for himself, carving his own path in Hollywood. Growing up, Michael Jr. had seen firsthand what the Hollywood lifestyle was like. The fame, the pressure, and the long hours. Believe it or not, it wasn't always glamorous. He watched his father become a household name, but he also saw the downsides, the scandals, the personal struggles. and the overwhelming cost of being in the spotlight. So when it came time to make a career choice, he had to decide. Did he want to be like his father, or did he want something different? Well, the answer turned out to be a little bit of both. At first, Michael tried acting. I mean, come on. His dad was one of the biggest television stars in history. How could he not at least give it a shot? He appeared in a few TV projects, but something didn't feel right. He didn't love being in front of the camera the way his dad did. The constant attention, the pressure to live up to his father's name, it just wasn't for him. But there was one part of Hollywood that fascinated him, and it was the art of storytelling. You see, Michael Jr. had grown up watching his father not just act, but also write, direct, and produce. That was what really caught his interest. He wanted to be behind the scenes, shaping the stories and bringing them to life in his own way. So instead of chasing Hollywood stardom like his father, he decided to go into filmmaking. But not just any filmmaking. He wanted to tell Christian and faith-based, family-friendly stories that had real heart. Why? Because deep down, he wanted to create the kind of movies and television shows that inspired people, just like his father's work had done for generations, but in a different way entirely. Once Michael found his calling, there was no stopping him. He started making films and television series that focused on hope, faith, and redemption. And let's be real, that's a far cry from the usual Hollywood dramas filled with scandals and controversy. And guess what? People loved them. One of his most famous projects is the Love Comes Softly series. This project was a huge deal. If you're a fan of heartfelt, emotional period dramas, you've probably heard of it. It was based on a book by Jeanette Oke, and Michael turned it into a beloved television movie franchise that ran for years. The series was all about love, loss, and finding faith in the hardest times. Basically, everything Michael had lived through himself. However, his biggest hit has to be the TV series titled When Calls the Heart. This show was so good that it became a phenomenon. It's a heartwarming drama set in the early 1990s, full of romance, family struggles, and strong moral values. It gained a massive fan base known as the Hearties, and even today it continues to be one of the most watched faith-based shows on television. In a post on his social media page, Michael has expressed his appreciation to his fans for showing this particular series so much love, saying, "The Hearties are the most passionate fan base in existence. Their unwavering support for When Calls the Heart knows no bounds. They go above and beyond to show their love, spreading hope and kindness. So glad you were honored." Now here's where things get really interesting. Even though Michael wanted to do things differently from his father, he couldn't deny the impact his father's life and legacy had on him. Think about it. His dad was the king of heartwarming, family-friendly television shows. Shows like Little House on the Prairie weren't just popular. They were loved by millions around the world. Families gathered around the television to watch episodes that made them laugh, cry, and learn valuable life lessons. Whether Michael realized it or not, that was exactly the kind of storytelling he was drawn to. Sure, he wasn't acting like his dad, but he was carrying on the same legacy of wholesome, emotional storytelling that his father had perfected. What's more surprising about his entire career choice is the fact that many of the themes in his works, from family to faith and redemption, mirrored the very struggles he had gone through in his own life. It's almost like deep down, he was continuing what his father had started, but in his own way. In an interview, Michael opened up about how much his father's work impacted him. He said, "My dad's work definitely influenced me. It showed me that quality storytelling impacts culture. I can't count the number of people who have come up to me and expressed their thankfulness for that programming. In fact, just the other day, a woman approached me and said, 'I lived in the inner city and had a very dysfunctional family, but your father provided me hope. I wanted him to be my father.' This type of outpouring even shocked my father, and he was at times overwhelmed by the impact of his work. But there's something so many people do not know about Michael Jr., and it's the fact that all his life he has had to carry an extremely heavy burden. That's the immense pressure of living and growing in his father's shadow, and the struggle of trying to break free from it all. Living in the shadow of a legend. Believe it or not, Michael just made a jaw-dropping revelation, confessing that for years he lived under the heavy weight of constant comparisons. No matter what he did, people would constantly compare him to his father and measure his success against his father's. Michael had revealed that it was a huge shadow to live under. For a long time, he wasn't sure if he could escape it or how he could finally step out from that shadow to become his own person. This pressure isn't just with his personal life and family, it's also with his career choices, and the fact that he chose to pursue a career in film production and directing just like his dad didn't make things any easier. The truth is, casting directors, producers, and fans all assumed he'd step into the spotlight just like his dad. After all, Hollywood loves a good legacy story. A father passes the torch to his son, and the legend continues. But for Michael, it was never that simple. He once admitted, "One of the main realizations is that any child of a movie star that has been as successful as my father is might just be an ordinary guy who's going to live an ordinary life. It's not easy." Imagine growing up with that weight on your shoulders. Every move you make is judged. Every decision is compared to what your dad did before you. And if you fail, you're not just failing yourself, you're failing the Landon name. Well, Michael had to deal with that every single day. However, if there's one thing Michael had to do, it was to work on himself, shed his father's image, and become his own person. And this also meant making better decisions when it came to his personal life, marriage, and family. Michael may have grown up in the spotlight of Hollywood, but when it came to his personal life, he decided to choose a path of love, stability, and deep family values far away from the chaotic nature of show business. While his father was known for his multiple marriages and complicated personal relationships, Michael decided to take a different approach by striving to build a solid, lasting marriage and a close-knit family that reflected the very ideals he valued most. At the heart of it all is his wife, Cherie Gregory, the woman who became not only his partner in life, but also the foundation of the family they created together. Michael met Cherie Gregory in the 1980s, and from the very beginning, it was clear that their relationship was special. Cherie, an actress herself, had a quiet elegance and a supportive nature that complemented his personality perfectly. Unlike many Hollywood relationships that burn fast and fade quickly, theirs was different. It was built on mutual respect, faith, and a deep understanding of each other's values. In December 1987, they took the next step and got married, beginning a journey that would stand the test of time. Of course, Michael had seen firsthand what a broken home looked like when his father divorced his mother. He knew the impact it had on children, and he was determined to create a different experience for his own family. Unlike his own childhood, which was spent under the watchful eye of the public due to his father's fame, Michael and Cherie decided to raise their children with more privacy and normalcy. They didn't want their kids to grow up under Hollywood's constant scrutiny. Instead, they put their focus on creating a home filled with love, faith, and strong moral values. Though he eventually built a career in entertainment, Michael made it super clear that his work never came before his family. He made it a priority to be present in his children's lives, guiding them, supporting them, and ensuring that they always knew the importance of family bonds. At some point, Michael realized that his father's relentless pursuit of success meant sacrificing time at home, and it wasn't until later in life that his father eventually expressed regret over not being as present in their lives as he wished he had been, and Michael didn't want that for himself. What most people don't know is that although the iconic Landon was larger than life on television, even he couldn't escape the realities of health struggles. In 1991, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a devastating disease that would take his life just 3 months later. And in his final moments, he expressed regrets, wishing he'd spent more time traveling with the family. Michael took that lesson to heart and made it a point of duty to strike a balance with his family and career by pursuing his passion in filmmaking, while also ensuring that his family remained his greatest priority. Michael may have grown up in the shadow of a television icon, but he never set out to follow in his father's footsteps. Instead, he forged his own path, honoring his father's legacy while staying true to his own vision and values. What do you think? Did he make the right choice? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look into the Landon family legacy, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications so you never miss our latest Hollywood stories.